probably live right now, but I'm just going to make sure. Stop streaming from there. Okay. Great. All right, I think we are live. Hello, everybody who's watching. Welcome. Feel free to let me know in the chat if any audio or video sounds strange. Welcome to a special edition of Playwright to Playwright, where we pair emerging writers with a fellow Canadian playwright that has influenced their work. My name is Justin, the project manager for the Canadian Plaything. I'd like to acknowledge that the Plaything is hosted from Victoria, BC and Calgary, Alberta. And so respectively, that is the unceded territories of the Lekwungen people, and Treaty 7, the territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy and Tsuut'ina Nation. Tonight, it's a great privilege to have with us Natalie Meisner and CHRISTIFFERSEN. Tia is joining us also from Calgary. She's a Calgary-based queer playwright who is a previous student of Natalie's, and Natalie, who is joining us from Salt Spring Island. I'd like to invite them on stage. Hello.
Hey.
All right, so we're all here. And tonight is a bit different. We're going to try something where we're going to play a little bit of a logline game with our audience, a suggestion by Natalie. And essentially, throughout the interview, Tia and Natalie are going to comment titles, hypothetical play titles into the chat. And then whoever's watching can pitch what they think the logline will be for that script. And then at the end of the interview, Tia or Natalie will kind of pick their favorite one and then go away and write a one-page script from that logline. And so we're just going to test that idea and see how it goes. And feel free to just comment any questions you have as well. So I guess to start, I think we'd love to know a little bit more about the two of you and how you came to be in the theater, maybe starting with Natalie.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. Natalie Meisner. I started out in theater in the indie scene in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I come from a really small town, Shelburne and Lockport, Nova Scotia. We didn't have theater or music. We had just sort of had the basics, reading and writing. So I went to Halifax to be a journalist, and I auditioned for a play, got the part, and kind of went from there, and then became involved in a theater company called Chestnut Tree, where we took over an old department store, kind of Wooster Group style. We did not. I hear a question.
Sorry, that was me. Continue. I just muted myself.
That's okay. So yeah, that was my kind of start in it, was sort of just auditioning for things, finding out that I loved it. I had a few plays done at KTS, King's Theatrical Society. Went to train as an actor at the National Theatre School. Yeah, and did lots of kind of self-started indie theater in Halifax before coming out west and continuing my education, and then also finding my footing as a prof and all that. So that's it in a nutshell. How about yourself, Tia?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I am Tia, as has been said. And I'm a queer non-binary playwright living on Treaty 7 territory, and currently working on my MFA at the University of Calgary with a specialty in theater studies, although I'm also working a lot on playwriting. And I'm still very much an infant in the theater world, but I kind of got into it when I was doing my undergrad at Mount Royal in English. So I have that degree now, but I've always been interested in writing, but that's kind of where I decided that I wanted to pursue playwriting. And I took some script writing classes with Natalie. So I'm just really having a great time exploring the theater world and learning from artists like her. And yeah, I mean, the thing I love about theater is challenging social norms and the ways that we can subvert audience expectations. And my two main goals with anything I write are to make people laugh and to give them something to chew on as they leave the theater, or in our case right now, close their browser window.
Right.
Worthy goals, worthy goals. Love them.
Perfect. So yeah, I think with that, I think I'll pass the torch over to Tia for the interview. We're going to start off with two quick play readings from the two playwrights, and then we'll move on to the interview with a bit of the game in there as well.
Great.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah. So we're going to read, first of all, a scene from my play in progress called Area 33. So this play takes place at the Shag Harbor UFO Museum, which is a real place. The play is a fictionalized kind of version of events. But at its heart, it's about intergenerational trust and mistrust. It's about the fishery, the future of the fishery, which is sort of a metaphor for the future of all the industries and the way that we're using them. So it's about the lobster fishery because that's the one that I kind of grew up in and around. In the play, a young woman, Chloe, who Tia has kindly agreed to play that part for me because it's horrible to be a playwright and do the talking head thing. So I know from the class that we've had together that she's a great reader. So she's going to play Chloe. And she's a young woman who has lost her mom, is living with her uncle. And because she's good on computers, and us boomers, not so much. I'm actually more of a Gen X, but the boomers, not so much. She gets kind of sucked into doing his books for the lobster pound, for the lobster business. This is not great because he's kind of cooking the books, he's kind of trimming corners, and there's some fraud going on. So she's kind of an at-risk young person. She's just about launching into adulthood, but not quite there. And she's living at her uncle's place and kind of helping him on the computer. She's lost her mom. And at this point in the play, she has walked by the UFO museum a few times. Everybody in town, and this is actually a true story, everybody regards the place with equal amounts of sort of amusement and frustration because people were kind of like, oh, great, that's what we're known for, the UFO museum. And then on the other hand, you sort of want tourists to stop and buy things. So Chloe, who Tia will be playing, has taken a job there, more or less because she doesn't have much else to do with her time. And the part that I'm playing, which is Evelyn, is I'm an undercover DFO officer, so Department of Fisheries and Oceans officer, who has kind of befriended Chloe, but is also trying to pick her brain in order to bust her uncle. So I think that it's very plotty. I don't usually write such sort of plot-driven stuff, but that's where we are, that kind of in a nutshell. Chloe doesn't yet know that Evelyn, who I'm playing, is DFO, is Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So they're kind of unlikely friends. And this is scene 3 from Act 2, scene 3 from Area 33. Oh, right. And I guess we should tell them that you've just knocked the head off a plywood alien.
Yes.
Very key part. So Chloe is coming in from the outside and they have this plywood alien up in the parking lot. And like the locals keep going by and knocking the heads off just for shits and giggles. So Chloe just walks back in after finding the head in the parking lot of the plywood alien. Take it away.
They knocked the head off again. I'll get it. Fucking stupid thing. What is the point?
If you want to tell me what's making you upset, you can.
I'm not upset.
Chloe kicks the alien whose head now goes flying. All right. You're not upset.
Okay. You want to know what is garbage? You want to know what is complete garbage?
What's that?
People expect you to care about totally inane shit. Like, I am supposed to go back to school and do trigga fucking nometry, put up with shade from Miss Friggin' Jock Popular. It's also fucking asinine. Nothing makes sense. Like, right now, I am just, like, here, doing what? Taping this head back on so some asshole can come knock it off again? It's also futile.
You're right. Evelyn gets up from her desk, takes the alien off of Chloe's desk, and tosses the whole thing off the door, dusts off her hands.
What are you?
Look, Chloe, you don't have a choice about what's happened, but you do have a choice about what comes next. All the terrible things that you're thinking of doing to yourself or others.
I'm not, you don't know anything about me.
Maybe not. But I do know people who've had their lives turned upside down. People who've lived through bloody civil wars, had their schools shot up by militia.
Militia. Where
All
is...
the terrible things in your head. Write them down on a piece of paper and set them on fire, or bury them in a time capsule. I'm here from the future to tell you it gets better.
Aha, I get it. I know what's going on here.
What's that?
You're the fucking alien.
You know, maybe I am. I just might be.
Okay, then let me ask you this. Why does every alien abduction, I mean, why has it always got to do with anal probes? You otherworldly, supremely wise individuals, you dodge asteroids and blast through the space-time continuum to get here, then it's like, you know what we really need to do? All will be revealed if we can just get a flashlight up this dimwit's asshole. Does that make any sense to you, boss?
No, it is weird, actually. Not that, you have to, but if you wanted to talk about her, your mother,
Fucking Sheldon. He told you, didn't he?
he told me she passed away.
Passed away. Passed away? I fucking hate words. I hate people. And the words people use, they're the worst. Here's what gets me. While it was happening, everyone looked away. Everywhere she went, she left a trail of people wanting money and broken glass. But once she was safely dead, well, let me tell you, this little village really knows how to throw a funeral. Everyone came out dressed to the nines. Her grade 3 teacher standing there talking about what cute little houses she drew in art class. Why bother?
You.
Me what?
They did that for you.
Yeah, well, they can save it. And that book you told me about, I read it. Oh, death is a part of life. We all live in each other, blah-de-blah. Thing is, my mother wasn't a part of some beautiful wheel of existence, okay? She's not going to rise again in the flicker of a bird's wing.
I am so sorry, Chloe.
She's just another junkie who died alone with a hot spike in her arm. No fancy idea is going to change that.
Your mother had problems, Chloe. It doesn't mean she didn't love you.
I know that. I'm not fucking stupid. She just loved ferrets and the cactus on the windowsill in our apartment and vodka and heroin and painkillers. More.
It's not that simple.
It is. And she died, leaving behind nothing but a bill for her funeral.
She left you.
Big whoop.
Look, we have to be careful. When things happen to us, messed up things, we have to be very careful about how we tell the story to ourselves.
I should have stayed with her. I went to Sheldon's. It was easier. If I had just stayed with her.
Can't know that.
It's true. She'd still be here.
There is a part of the brain.
I know. Chemicals, serotonin, blah, blah. They had me on all the drugs. I read about what they do. You know the part responsible for impulse control? Guess what it's called?
What?
Area 33, which is also the name of our fishing district here.
Really?
Yeah, it's all, whatever, connected and shit.
Sometimes people who've been hurt, we get something inside of us. It's a hunger, like a hungry ghost, and no matter how much you feed it.
How much of what?
Booze, drugs, sex, anything. No matter how much you pour in there, it just needs more.
What do you know about it?
I had a situation, a work situation, where I was taken advantage of, and
Were you raped?
not with acts we usually think of when we use this word, but assaulted, yes, hurt, humiliated, intimidated.
Did you tell on them? Did they get them?
I couldn't.
Why the fuck not? Don't you know that that's how they keep getting away with it?
My superiors had information about me, and I
What kind of information?
had a high security clearance, and if I told what they were doing to me, then
Wait, at a museum?
I was in the Navy before, and I had to deal with it alone because you'd be discharged. And even,
You're gay, right?
yes,
Oh, that's all. No one cares about that anymore. We got our own set of gays running the new bakery and everyone loves them. It's totally no big deal.
Well, it used to be. So this went on for several years, and I did a lot of things, destructive things, to cope. So I never knew your mother, but all that to say, I can imagine.
She was fun.
Was she?
I know it's fucked up, but we had so much fun when she was high. We just go on these tears through the city, trying on hats, and she just thought of the craziest shit. Like, if we wanted to speak with British accents all day or go swim in the fountain in the public gardens, we just did it.
That's really amazing.
It was. Yeah.
Then the phone rings.
Hello, you have reached the Shag Harbor UFO Museum. How can I help you? Yes, the festival will happen in August. Give me your email. I'll send you all the info. Second most documented, right after Roswell. Tours of the crash site. You bet.
Chloe enjoys this for a moment, and then they both go back to work. Scene. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, crushed that part. Thank you. I thought you would.
Yeah, that was fun. All right. So, the piece that I'm going to read is from my play called Shellfish Eucharist, which was presented as an audio play during Sage Theater's Ignite Festival of Emerging Artists last summer. It would be wrong to not acknowledge all of the people that helped me out with this. So I was super lucky to work with the Ignite team and my amazing cast and sound designer. And all of their talent really enlivened the script. And yeah, so I'm really grateful to all of them. So I'll read the synopsis first to give you an idea of what the play is about. Living in a staunchly Catholic home, working at her parents' lobster restaurant called the Cull and Crusher, and being pushed to attend confessionals with a local priest, 16-year-old Poppy feels confined by the limitations of her family's religion. She has spent much of her life attempting to stave off shame for parts of life she sees as normal, experiencing pleasure, being attracted to multiple genders, even dabbling in astrology. Unable to escape constant reminders of her family's stifling values, Poppy is isolated, save for her secular best friend and coworker Sylvan. Together, they navigate coming of age and the perils of wearing a lobster suit to advertise the town's juiciest shellfish. When that same lobster comes to life with an arresting godlike presence, Poppy is pushed to resist shame and embrace her identity. So tonight I'll be reading 3 of Poppy's monologues, each of which anchors the beginning, middle, and end of the play. Throughout the progression of these passages, the impact of the magical lobster can be seen on Poppy's attitude towards herself and the relationships in her life. The effect of the lobster's ethereal wisdom is also shown on Poppy's polyamorous brother Leo, who has dealt with much of the same limitations imposed by Catholicism and has also learned to accept himself more fully. So this is scene 1. Poppy is in the staff room of the Cull and Crusher, preparing for her shift. The going rate for a professional quality lobster costume is $1,245. The Cull and Crusher forces anyone unlucky enough to wear the thing to watch a 30-minute video about how to take care of it, then sign a waiver vowing to pay back every dollar if it gets wrecked on the job. Two of my paychecks wouldn't even cover that. Plus, you'd have to take inflation into account. I had to sign another waiver promising not to sue if the costume causes me any health concerns, like in case I pass out from heat stroke or something. Seemed a bit dramatic to me, especially considering my parents owned the restaurant. Imagine if I sued my own parents. That'd be kind of satisfying, actually. Anyways, the lobster shifts are only survivable because you take turns with another person throughout the day. Some sort of health and safety thing, I guess. But when you're on your break, you have to go sit in this disgusting staff room that has butter smeared all over the walls and smells like the inside of a lobster tank. Then it's back to the costume, which also smells god-awful. You'd think they would have a rule forcing everyone to wear deodorant in the costume. They don't. Oh, almost forgot my sign. Because you need to show off the picture of an unusually shiny lobster dinner. Oh, and the slogan, from tank to tongue. My dad came up with that one all by himself. This next one is scene 9, so right about the middle of the play. I did it. I masturbated for the first time. I'm 16 years old and I masturbated for the first time. Here's how it went. I waited until my parents were out of the house at the Cullen Crusher doing payroll or something boring. So, with a place to myself, I went upstairs and put on a record, a vinyl record to really set the mood. I chose something with a moderate beat, not too fast, not too slow. Then I lit some candles, closed the blinds partway, and took off all my clothes. Being naked for no reason felt so freeing. I wasn't about to hop in the shower or change into different clothes or undergo an intensive full body hair removal before youth night at the public pool. I was just naked. Except for one accessory, that is a rosary worn around my neck, the cross dangling between my titties. That's like a sin on top of a sin on top of a sin. I lied down in bed, remembering what Sylvan told me. Relax and just touch yourself wherever it feels good. So I started caressing myself like I was in a Nivea commercial or something. Then I homed in on my breasts, rubbed them clockwise, counterclockwise, gave them a few squeezes. I tweaked my nipples, pinched their pokey nubs, swirled my fingertips around my areolas. Oh, my skin felt so soft and delicate. And I got goosebumps as I kept going. I slid my middle finger into my vagina, surprised by the softness that met my touch. I imagine it's what the inside of a memory I imagine it's what the inside of a memory foam pillow would feel like, only wetter and hotter, like it was filled with drool. I poked at it gently, shocked at how warm it felt. How many degrees is it in there? It's like a little sauna between my legs. Oh, I started moving my finger like I was scooping ice cream, and I just kept scooping, scooping, scooping until I felt this pit in the bottom of my stomach and a warm tingle in my bits, and then, fuck! Everything lost focus, my armpits started sweating, and my eyebrow hair stood on end. Holy shit. What was that? An orgasm? Why hadn't I done this sooner? Then all I could think about was how many orgasms I've missed out on, and now I'm determined to make up for every single one. The next few hours were really busy. Do you even know how many ways there are to get yourself off? I discovered why they make detachable shower heads. And now I know for certain that sex is not just meant for procreation. There is no way God put 8,000 nerve endings in the clitoris if he didn't want me to get off for the hell of it. And this last monologue is from the second to last scene of the play. I've come to realize a few things. First and foremost, lobsters are probably the most self-important creatures on the planet, followed closely by Catholic humans, who, by the way, are some of the most obviously hypocritical people, like my mom, who forced me to go to church, confessions, do all my sacraments, and doesn't even really care about Catholicism all that much. Then there's my dad, who just about had a nervous breakdown when Leo and I told him how we identify, and those identities are not Catholic. You'd think I tore a Bible in half right in front of his face, then had my period all over it. My dad hasn't said much about it since, but I know he's deeply disturbed by the realization that my brother and I are sexual beings with sexual desires. As if he doesn't have any of those. When I was 11, I went onto our family computer, and there it was, lesbian porn staring right back at me. We all knew it was him because Leo would have known to delete the browser history. Thinking about that still makes me want to gag. But like I said, they're humans. Leo still has multiple lovers, and yeah, he still uses the word lovers. I've hung out with both of them, and they're the best. Hillary is a dentist who knows almost as much about serial killers as Sylvan and I do, and Maeve is a vegetarian yoga instructor who loves to talk about the phases of the moon. My parents have met each of them separately at Leo's house. They haven't been invited for any brunches yet. In the last couple months, my dad's tried being nicer to me and not saying every God fearing thought that pops into his brain, but he does still mope around every Sunday when I say I'm still not gonna go to church. When him and my mom get back, he puts on this little show about how neither the first nor second reader were as good as I used to be. That letter from St. Paul to the Corinthians totally fell flat, like I care. Sometimes I read takeout menus or movie synopses like I would the readings at church, and I get a little flutter in my chest seeing that yearning in his eyes. Char-broiled pork and lemongrass on a bed of rice vermicelli, topped with peanuts, sprouts, and green onions. My mom told me to stop antagonizing him, and I told her to go back in time and not steep me in a life of shamefulness. The guilt trip's not a sustainable long-term solution, but it does the job for now. Oh, and I don't work at the Cullen Crusher anymore. The advertising position was eliminated. So I'm on the hunt for something a little more low key with a boss I'm not related to. Sylvan was promoted to a host though, so I still go all the time to visit and eat cheese biscuits. The lobster stopped coming around too. I dream about them occasionally, but nothing too intense. They must be somewhere imparting wisdom on some other impure family. Or maybe they were boiled alive in a hot tub. Hard to say.
Woo! There's so many great singers in there. That's
Thanks.
fabulous. From tank to tongue. Yeah, thank you for that. Really awesome
Yeah, thanks.
and brave.
Yeah, well, I guess with that, should we get into this logline game with the audience?
Sure. So should we drop some into the chat on YouTube? That's what we're going to do.
Yes.
And just to recap that, so we're going to drop in some log lines here, or sorry, we're going to drop in some titles, and and the audience who are on the call, if you could just try to make up, when we put the title in, just make up a log line, like try to guess what kind of a piece it would be. Tia and I are going to drop some in there, so it's like an interactive, play along.
And the fun part about this game is, of course, that we will be looking at your log lines throughout, and we're going to pick our favorite at the end of the interview, and each of us will go away and write a one-page script based on one of these fantastic log lines. So we are dropping them into the chat now. Feel free to choose whichever title strikes your fancy.
That last one of yours is very Zoom appropriate. Has that been in my teeth the whole time?
The age-old Zoom question.
Yeah. "26 frogs in a bucket." Uh-huh. Okay.
And this next one is inspired by recent events. And yes, as many log lines as you want. You can absolutely go nuts with it. Okay. So now while all of you do that, we are going to carry on with our interview. So let me just, oh, I have a pile of papers and my questions have disappeared, but I will find them. All right. So my first question is sort of based off of both of these readings that we just gave. And because both of these plays we read from tonight feature geographical areas where we each grew up. Um, and I know much of your other work features a locale that is really integral to the story, like Boom Baby. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how important location is to your drafting process. And also if you could talk about how your characters embody the locations in which they exist.
Right. Oh, that's a super question. So, you know, as a young writer, I did not really at first I really resisted writing things about the place where I had come from. I felt there was all this pressure to write the fish and bingo play or to write from a regional perspective. And so instead I wanted to write about Virginia Woolf. You know, I wanted to kind of write about things that were my gateway out of there. And then it's kind of interesting, you know, as I had the chance to live in different parts of the country. I've lived in almost every Canadian city at some point, working in theater and working in, you know, arts and literature. And as I had a chance to kind of go away from there and to look at the place, I began to realize more and more like how storied it was. I began on the beginning of the Zoom call by saying, you know, we didn't have theater really, you know, we didn't have all those extra arts things that you have if you go to a city school. But all the people around me, my relatives were amazing storytellers. And the things that you know, that my uncles and my grandfather they were all fishermen. And so their daily lives were just kind of stuffed with story and folklore and culture. I guess it takes being away to see that and also to see how I can work with those characters in that locale in a way that tells both a macro story and a micro story. So one of the things I want to do with Area 33 is, yes, it's about the lobster fishery, and yes, it's about that industry having some fraud in it, being very fraught in terms of who's allowed to fish, who should fish, whose resources are these. But I also want to talk about just you know, fish and oil large writ. So industry large writ and what it means. I don't think I could understand any of these things had I not had the chance to live in Alberta, and started to make these connections between, like, you know, oil and fish and just kind of how Canada is such a resource driven country. So the place is super important, but the way that I want to write about it is sort of like insider and outsider.
Mhm.
And I think that I can now. And then it also has the added benefit, because I'm terribly homesick sometimes. It also has the benefit of bringing that location and those people back to me when I'm so far away. So that's a little bit about the importance of the place and what I want to try to do with the setting. The second part of the question, I kind of lost it now. I kind of got lost in that one.
Oh, yeah, I can repeat. The second part was, um, how do your characters embody the locations in which they exist?
Oh, interesting. I think it probably is in their diction the most, in their word choice and um, the way that they kind of parse out their hope, that they're very stingy with their hope, with their kind of like what you can hope for and what you can wish for. Um, it's a place that where, you know, when the bottom fell out of the fishery in the 80s, it falls out several times, you know, just like the boom and bust cycle in that we have sometimes in Alberta. But it's a place where people are kind of afraid to dream really big, and yet they have sort of dream like lives, or like they have these huge and storied lives, but at the same time it's balanced out with real humility and real humor too. So those characters, I think it's like the way they never speak to each other directly either, which is kind of interesting. There's a part in later on from Area 33 where Chloe tells Evelyn, look, if you see people walking down the road hand in hand, like a couple, if you see them walking along hand in hand, you assume that they're insane or drunk or both. Because just those PDAs, public displays of affection, are just sort of suspect. Like, but it doesn't mean that they don't love. It doesn't mean they don't show love. I guess they just show love in a different way. So that's one of the things I want to get at in those characters. Yeah. Well, how about yourself? How does location play into your characters?
I guess it's sort of similar. I I I think I imagine what each of the characters within the play would feel in relation to the location that they're in. And so in this one, which is like semi-autobiographical, it's about being in small town Alberta and not really feeling like you fit into any one place. But then of course there's the added like mental locale of God and Catholicism, and then of course that physical manifestation in the church. Um, and in Shellfish Eucharist, the whole, there is a scene where Poppy goes into the church and she goes into the confessional with Father Phil is the priest's name. And they have kind of this exchange where they sort of just level with each other and are really honest with one another about how they're thinking. Um, but then the magical lobster enters when Father Phil's out of the room getting his homemade pickles. And
Yeah.
so so I guess what I tried to do is just take something that seems totally outlandish and out of place in the lobster and bring it into the church, because I think that's how a lot of us feel in those spaces.
Which really works brilliantly, I think, in the play. Like you said, the ethereal wisdom of lobsters, and it's pretty cool. I didn't realize how much connection there was between the two pieces. Like I more thought, like let's do this interview together because of our comedy, social justice, like queer work. There's all kinds of other connections. But now that I see the lobster connection, it's next level.
Yeah.
Because I mean, lobsters are like really fascinating creatures. Like I don't want to fall down a science wormhole, but they did think that they had like self-repairing DNA. They never stop growing. Like there's all kinds of craziness that I think in a fun way does lend them to that, as you say, ethereal wisdom. And it's also interesting that they used to be poor people food. That if I talk to my grandmother's generation or my mom, they talk about being ashamed of having a lobster sandwich because they're like, oh, that's what we eat. That's what our fathers catch. And so it's sort of shameful. You want peanut butter like all the rich kids. And it's like, what? And so it's sort of a metaphor for globalization in a certain way, like how one kind of crop or one kind of fish can suddenly balloon and become popular. And the next thing you know, people are making all this money shipping it overseas. But is that good for the planet to ship this food around the world? So there's like some real world things and some ethereal things, and that's a fun connection too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love the discussion about lobsters in your play is just so fun. And that the regenerating cells or DNA, I didn't know that before. So
Yeah.
lobsters are really more magical than I, gave them credit for.
Yes, and it's sort of a fun uber thesis of the play that maybe they are the aliens, like maybe maybe they were the ancient aliens from the,
Yeah.
from those shows. It's like they made Stonehenge and all the stuff, la 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 la.
Yeah, the lobsters are behind it every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. You talked a little bit about humor, so I think that's a great segue into my next question here. So Area 33, of course, deals with mental illness and addiction, loss, and features a character who is a victim of Canada's gay purge. And it's also really funny. And similarly, your play Legislating Love centers around the story of Everett Clippert, who is imprisoned for being gay. And it also weaves in a lot of comedy, especially, I think, through the character Tanya, who's a Métis comedian whose set is actually incorporated into the narrative, which I thought was so brilliant and entertaining.
Oh, thanks.
So, what do you think comedy offers theater in terms of social justice issues and LGBTQ history and representation?
Oh, that's so fun. I think I've come to think of comedy now, and it's like a certain kind of comedy, which is not obviously the punching down comedy or the low hanging fruit comedy, but the kind that really makes us examine the narrative ruts that we've fallen into, or comedy that really makes us rethink everything we thought before. I feel like there's great possibility for social change and for all kinds of change inside of that moment of the laugh. that it just kind of shakes up all your assumptions and it makes space. At the same time, I mean, this is one of the things, I also did my PhD dissertation on the power of comedy. So it can also go wrong. And I'm really aware of that too. And it's why comedy is so difficult to write, because I could, I crack a certain joke. And if it is sort of part of if the joke is aimed at a community that I'm part of, then it's sort of, it can work. Now, if I were to take the same joke and aim that at another community whose lived experience I don't understand, that can go wrong. So it's sort of like playing in the powder keg. It's sort of like playing in the dynamite bucket to write comedy, especially when it's about really key issues. And yet, it's sort of like, that's my favorite thing to do. I want to write about really serious issues, but I want to write about them using comedy, because I feel like it also gets away from that thing that happens, is that sometimes when you're working on social issues or you're doing activism, you're preaching to the converted. Like everybody you're talking to agrees with you, and everyone sits there nodding. It's sort of like, I don't know, I feel like art can do more than that. So that's one of the reasons, is that I think, wow, maybe a bunch of people come going, oh, fun, a comedy about UFOs in Canada. It's Canada's Roswell. It's like these folkloric characters, and they're laughing and having a good time. And then boom, something goes off, and they walk out going with some new thoughts. And yeah, that's why I love to work in that terrain. And it's very exciting, but it's also very dangerous. I mean, one thing with the comedian character from Legislating Love is I felt like that was very, like, I tried to capture the riskiness of what bombing feels like. When you try to crack a joke and you bomb, how terrifying that is. And at the same time, I feel like people who work on humor about serious issues, I kind of, I admire it. I find it brave, and I want to try to keep doing it.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you said it makes space. It really does. Like, I mean, comic relief, of course, creates space when there's all this tension in the room, when it's really building up. And even if it is in a more lighthearted moment, like, I think it just opens people's minds to think about something that they might not have before. And even if you are that certain population of the audience where it is kind of preaching to the choir, then it's just fun and it's enjoyable, and you feel like, oh, I belong here. I belong in this work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the mixture, like in the piece that you read, and the piece, look, where you're talking about masturbation and just putting a little bit of humor in there, I feel like that can do so much good for people in terms of embracing their own agency, figuring out what pleases them, figuring out their own erotic life without it being very after school special, like without it being so heavy and about danger. Like that's really great, because so often you try to tell younger people, look, you can explore this and it doesn't have to hurt you. It can be a positive thing in your life. And so often it is cast as kind of shameful or negative, that if we can just put a pin in the balloon of shame for people with a little laughter, and I feel like, the piece really does that. And it's so funny. It's really lovely. And then I also think that comedy can be a resilience building for people. So if you see a joke that you feel like you're included or you're called to it, even if it doesn't solve the problem, you can live to fight another day. If you can have a bit of a laugh at a huge and thorny social problem that seems immovable, then you can, like, it's your personal flotation device or your resilience building strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, how often are you going through something traumatic or really dark, and everyone's looking at you like, "Oh, this sucks for you." And you crack a joke and then everyone's laughing and you're like, "Now I can deal with this moment."
Right. Right. Now I can get up tomorrow morning. Now I can
Yeah.
I don't know what'll happen after that, but I can get up and do a thing because
Mhm.
somebody laughed with me.
Yeah. And that's what I love about Chloe's character, is that she really embodies, like, she's struggling with the loss of her mother and with these, like, mental illnesses, but she's also so funny and she's cracking jokes, and I love that Evelyn just makes space for that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I wanted to do with an adult characters. Like all too often, I think in plays, they're sort of they're moralized, or they're sort of like they're problem solving everything for the young people. And I thought, like, no, actually, humans are not always like that. Like,
Hmm.
someone can hold space for you and help you sort out your own stuff without solving your problems. Just that you have a friend, even if they're a messed up friend who's trying to bust your uncle for fraud. Like human
We've
beings,
all been there.
yeah, right when that happens.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and that's, I mean, you mentioned the masturbation monologue, and that's what I was trying to do there as well. Is the issue I was trying to tackle is that, first of all, there's so much shame around masturbation, and especially around like girls or not men masturbating. There's like that's not in popular culture really at all, or in the media.
Yeah,
And yeah, like how does one masturbate when you have a vagina? Like that I did not know when I was that age. I was like, huh? And it was one of my friends that was like, yeah, you really need to do that. Like, you need to go and figure it out.
yeah,
And I think that that kind of question posed really seriously would be so alienating for people and would make teens like shrivel up and, recoil. So
yeah.
I think just by like injecting that with some comedy, it's so much easier to talk about it and also to point to the fact that like we're not really talking about it that much.
And what's brilliant about it too is it absolutely resists the filmic voyeurism, or like I think if we have ever seen women, or women of all types masturbating, and it's almost always sort of recuperated through some voyeuristic lens in popular
Mhm.
representation, and this one just resists that. It's sort of the way that you've written it. It's like, this is not supposed to sort of titillate you. It's not for the consumption of a kind of alienated viewer peeking at the person. Like, it's not that the actor is doing this to be to be looked at in a voyeuristic way. They're doing it for themselves and
Mhm.
exploring it for themselves, and putting the humor in there, I think, would make this so playable for an actor. There's I sometimes, I'm so glad now we have intimacy coaches in theater and film. It wasn't the case when I was a young person. When I was One of the reasons that I went from acting into writing is that there were no intimacy coaches. That many of us were kind of called upon to completely, all the time, shape yourself into a voyeuristic male gaze. And it
Yeah.
wasn't very cool with my feminist awakening. The two things happened at the same time. And there were no intimacy coaches. In fact, it was sort of it was a thing where male directors would sort of feel like it was okay to put you in that position, no matter what kind of part you were playing.
Mhm.
And so I love that, you've written it in this way where it resists it, incorporates some humor. And I don't think that most actors would have a problem playing the part. They'd actually probably enjoy it, versus some film parts where if they have to do that for somebody consuming it, it would be probably really tough emotionally for them, but not this
Mhm.
one.
Yeah, I mean, that's also why I structured it like a monologue to be telling of it after the fact, because I was curious when I was writing it, like how would I play this on a stage? And I ultimately came to that somebody recounting the story and all of the thoughts going through their head, like, is this a memory foam pillow? Like that would be more enjoyable for the audience. But yeah, I'm glad that you brought up that it could be for the actor as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that one of the things we should be doing, if we can, as writers, is write text that is absolutely, like, super rich for actors and enjoyable. And that piece is definitely that. Yeah.
Thanks. All right, well, should we take a look at how these log lines are coming along
Yeah, let's
in
take
the
a peek.
chat? All right.
Oh, they're crushing it over here. Look what's going on. I'm not a cat, I'm a lawyer. I think that one's gonna get all the love. Let's see. A young hotshot chef must save his French restaurant by developing a new menu full of forbidden food. Which one was that? That must have been, which one would that be?
That must be 26 Frogs in a Bucket.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
All right, let's see. Oh, has that been in my teeth the whole time? Robert Redford's last job is a live commercial for dental care, viewed by thousands. Smitten Kitten, an up-and-coming tech bro on the cusp of the next Facebook finds himself the owner of a kitten, the only thing left when his boyfriend leaves him.
I want to leave and start writing that right now.
I love that.
Yep.
Has this been in my teeth the whole time? Two secret vampire roommates try to manage the realities of a 2-week lockdown while doing undergrad virtually.
That's good too.
There's so many good ones in here. I love these.
That's fun.
Well, yeah, definitely keep them coming if more is coming to you.
This sounds like I think I might want to do Jason Smitten Kitten. That's really good. It sort of
Yeah,
seems like
that's a great
it would
one.
make a really good web comic.
Ooh, that would.
Mm.
Yep, that's a good one.
Nobody picked Meh the musical, but that's okay. Maybe we're all feeling too meh. It's too on the nose, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really fun. I'm just checking the time here. So should we be picking our favorite log lines at this point? I think you already said Jason Smitten Kitten is your favorite.
I do. I know. I'm tempted by the vampires too, as we all are. That's the point of vampires, right? That's why we're all tempted by the vampires.
They're titillating.
Yeah, they are. That's right.
Oh, here's for I'm not a cat, I'm a lawyer. A Texan lawyer's house is struck by lightning. The electrical surge pulls him into his Zoom meeting with a cat filter on his face. He must navigate the guts of Zoom to get back to his reality in time for court. That is fun.
That's the guy's real. I think that's nonfiction. That really happened to him, right? Yeah. So it'd be fun if you could get him to be in it. Like that would be next level.
Oh yeah, casting call for the lawyer who is not a cat.
Yeah.
We need you immediately.
Yeah, we need you.
Yeah, that makes me think it's like a cyberspace like Scooby-Doo, like the lawyer cat is inside of the computer and has to get back out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I have a couple more questions. These ones is kind of pivoting to be more about the current moment that we're living in. And I'm curious about how your approach to creativity and your creative process has changed to accommodate living and working through the pandemic.
Right. So all or many of my creative ideas have suddenly gone toward audio and digital theater. I mean, I already had those interests before. We did some pieces many years ago at Mount Royal called pod plays, where we had student written pieces, and they would write them all kind of designed. They were click and listen plays, and this was like, oh gosh, I want to say like 8 or 9 years ago. So before this whole before everything went digital. But recently, I guess it's because we're all in such a pause, we're in such a holding pattern right now. I've sort of picked up on my former interests in audio and podcasting, and also just thinking about the ways that we can use this format to still do all the creative stuff that we do as playwrights, just kind of doing it in different forms. So I have a few digital projects on the go. There's Legislating Love that you mentioned. Area 33, the piece that we read from this evening, will also have a showing at Alberta Theatre Projects, where I'm in their playwrights unit. Also, Boom Baby, that's my play about Maritimers in the oil patch. That will also have a digital airing, and the details are coming out about that soon, but it's an Alberta and Nova Scotia co-pro, Alberta Theatre Projects and Eastern Front Theatre.
Awesome.
So we're kind of bringing actors from both regions together who've been involved with the project before. And we'll announce the details of that soon.
That's really fun. I guess that lends itself really nicely to my last question, which is, what is exciting you about how theater has adapted to this new landscape? And what are you hoping that theater brings to a hopefully post-COVID era?
Well, here's an interesting thing. like to think that our audiences, that theater audiences, are some of the biggest critical thinkers, some of the biggest problem solvers. I mean, just like nobody makes you write poems or plays, nobody really makes you go to theater or poetry reading. You know, these are forms that are for people who are questioning and for people who are already looking at the world around them in critical ways. And I can already see my colleagues in theater turning their hands and turning their hearts and their creative skills to the big 21st century problems facing us. So, and solving the problems, like solving the technical problems. How do we connect? We're doing it, you know, right now, right here. And it's so good to see you, Tia. And
So
to pick up on, some of the threads that we've, you know, talked about in terms of your podcast and your ideas about social justice and comedy. I guess we're doing it, you know, right now is one of the ways. Yeah,
I agree. And how we've been interacting with the audience throughout this too, I think is great, because from what I myself feel and have gathered from other people is that like the audience energy and the energy of having other people in the room is what folks are really missing right now. So I think finding these other ways to connect with one another and seeing how eager people are to do that is really encouraging.
absolutely. And we have to keep finding ways to be, you know, to kind of hack the fact that we are stuck alone in all these rooms. And just try to keep finding ways to be creative. I know at sometime soon, one of my mentors, the wonderful Chappelle Jaffe, she said, keep writing your stuff, stay lean, things will reopen, just find ways to keep working. And I thought it was just such good advice. She's like, stay lean, respect your audiences, you know, keep working on your stuff. And, you know, in the meantime, find ways to connect with people, keep honing your skills. So I think I will go with Smitten Kitten. I think I will go with that one. And also, I would love it if any of you who are on the call also want to pick one of these titles and write a one-pager and send it to me or send it to us, to Justin and Tia and I for fun, because that kind of connection, I mean, there's probably lots of other writers and lots of other creators on this call. This is the kind of series it is, right? So I'd love to see your scripts in response to any of these.
Yeah, definitely. I think I will be tweeting out my one-page script. So if others want to do that as well and maybe tag Canadian Plaything, I think that would be really fun to be able to read them.
Yeah, I'm going to do that too. I'm going to get back on ye old Twitter.
I mean, there's so many to choose from, but I am really liking the hot chef saving his restaurant with the forbidden food.
That's good too. Let's go, hot chef.
Yeah, they're all great. So I think at this point, is Justin rejoining us for some possible audience questions? Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I can join. That was awesome. That's so cool seeing all those crazy ideas come in. I just wanted to clarify: is it a young hot chef or a young hot shot chef? I wonder which one you like more.
Oh, I took it like he's hot, like
right. So you could.
He's so buff.
Perfect.
For the film version, it'd have to be hot chef. For the theater version, it could be hot shot. You know.
That's funny. Yeah. For film, you have to have.
Oh yeah, it's always a hot chef.
Yeah, it's got to be, or your show won't sell.
Yep.
Unless it's like Ratatouille.
Right. The Adorable. Oh man, that's such a good movie.
It really is.
Yeah. Well, I guess so we're basically at time here. But what I essentially have to say is there anything that the two of you are working on? And I think we talked a little bit about this already, but Tia, maybe you mentioned you had something coming up as well, to let the audience know what you're doing.
Yeah, I am part of Downstage's Tales from the Student Mind microplay series. So that is, they're going to be releasing some microplays in advance of World Theater Day, which is towards the end of March. So yeah, stay tuned for that. It's really.
Do you have a title? Do you have a title yet?
No title yet. I'll keep you posted when I do.
Titles can be so hard. It's either like really easy and you have the perfect title, or it never comes ever. I feel.
There's so much responsibility. I have my superpower, if you're ever looking, for help, is I can always find the best title for everybody else's stuff and not for my own. I've had some real clunkers for my stuff where people, my editors, my dramaturgs are sometimes like, you can't do that to yourself. When nobody will come. But if you all have something, I can find great titles for other people's. I think it's that responsibility thing that, it starts to feel heavy. You're like, how can you sum up your own work? But
right. That could be like a little side business on Twitter. Natalie comes up with the titles for your plays.
Hey, my side hustle. That's so true. I got that.
Great. Perfect. So I think for our listeners, we will, with the one-page scripts from Tia and Natalie, what we can do is, obviously they can post them on their own social media. We can also post them on Twitter and Facebook. I think that makes sense. So stay posted for those. And definitely, if you find any of these log lines, picks your brain, take them and write your own and tweet us or Facebook us. Yeah. Oh, and feel free to let us know in the chat or message Canadian Plaything what you thought about this new kind of game that Natalie came up with. I think we have a couple left that we're gonna do. I think on March 4th, we have Christina Rodriguez from Quebec interviewing Donna Michelle St. Bernard. So they're gonna be on, and we're gonna see if we can try this again or try something different. Let us know how it was for you as a listener or viewer. We'd love to keep evolving the formula and making sure that we're creating things that are giving people hope and comedy, like Natalie said, and everything. So yeah. With that, I don't know, Tia or Natalie, if you have any last shout outs or comments to the audience that you want to make, or any questions. I don't think we have any questions in the chat because I forgot to mention that at the top.
Right. They're all so busy. They're all now off writing their one pagers. They're like clackety clack, which is really good.
Right.
I just want to say thanks for all the great work that you're doing with Canadian Plaything. It's a great resource to have. I'm going to give it to my students, like all these archive chats for everybody to watch. And it's just really wonderful to see you again, Tia. And this has just been a heck of a lot of fun. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. So thank you for having me. And yeah, it was great. It was nice to have something to put clothes on for.
Right. Yeah.
So true.
Perfect. Okay. I think with that, everybody stay in touch if you have any thoughts or more log lines. And I think I'm going to take us off the air. Right. Okay. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.